Welcome back to the World Builders Guild. Today we're going to be talking about myths, legends, stories, and how they help you flesh out your world and go more in depth into certain cultures or cities. What I mean by like a myth or a legend is think about the tales we tell, Hercules or the Boogeyman. They're very different stories and they're on very different scales. I can't tell you at the moment who knows more, or the Boogeyman or Hercules, but they each have a purpose. And what is the purpose? Hercules is to inspire, the Boogeyman is to make sure your kids follow the rules by scaring them and telling them something's going to take them if they don't. But where did those start? Well, I've got no clue. No, no idea if those have an actual basis. I'm sure Hercules, somebody was similar in history, and something around the Boogeyman had to have happened, probably, to inspire it. And now let's take that and go into your own world. So, for my world, let's say that I'm going to have, and I've got one wrote out for the kobolds that live in the mountains. They have a myth about the northern section of the mountains, and they call it the Dead Mountains. And they say that if you go there and you lay your eyes on it, you will be instantly turned into an undead, and you will never return home. And that's a story they tell. They threaten to take kids to the Dead Mountains if they don't listen. They warn travelers to not go that way. Or, some of them send people that piss them off that way. They want them to suffer. So they send them to the Dead Mountains. Because they believe that that's what happens. And as far as my players know, and will know unless they go there, it's a myth. It's a legend. It's not something real. But what I've done in World Anvil is I've wrote down into the secret section the associated secret. And I'll pull this up so it's easier for everybody to see. But the associated secret is, while the kobolds are close to what the Dead Mountains are, it's actually one of the Blight Crystals. That's what I've started calling the crystals, by the way. I've kind of landed on a name there. It's one of the Blight Crystals that is leaking a mass amount of charming magical effect. So when someone gets close, it takes a hold, they get drawn in. But this charm is so strong, it even affects creatures that are normally immune, such as undead. This is where the undead part of the myth comes from, because as an undead is drawn in, and then something living is drawn in, it bites them, they turn, and you end up with a large horde of undead surrounding this crystal. And the real deal is, if the crystal is destroyed, now you have a large horde of free roaming undead that can be unleashed as part of the effect of this crystal being destroyed. And I think that will help lead my players into sort of maybe thinking that destroying the crystals isn't always the right answer. Maybe they'll have figured that out by the time they get here and they don't destroy it. But I wanted it to have a logical effect that once it's destroyed, all these charm things are no longer charmed and they are free to do what they will or wander mindlessly. And then the Dead Mountains will become even more close to the kobold myth of Dead Mountains. Except these zombies will descend and there will be a plague of zombies upon the land. And the players will have to figure out somehow to deal with that. And that's just one myth. And I'm going to flesh out more myths as I go on. I'm probably not going to talk about all of them. Or most of them, really. But the point of the myth is to give you something to seed with your players and to make the kobold culture, the kobolds that live in these mountains, will feel like they've lived here a long time. And that's just one myth. You can throw in small, tiny myths that parents at a town tell their children. Maybe something about the jack-o'-lantern man who kidnaps children, and it's really just the parents who put on a jack-o'-lantern and they just decided that's how they do it in this town. They put on a jack-o'-lantern and they grab a child and when they're not listening and pull them off into the woods for a little bit and then let them go. That's it. That's all it has to be. And that would make that town feel a little bit more alive and a little bit more depth. And that gives you somewhere to go with the culture, too. So, because the kobolds fear the North Mountains more than they want gold, they shun any kobold that is so greedy that they would go to the North Mountains for gold. And maybe it's the other way around. Maybe they honor people that have decided to go for that hunt of gold. Maybe they want gold more, but they're afraid for their own lives. And so instead of shunning them, they support them. They give them what they need, and they send them on their way for them never to return. A trip to the Dead Mountains may be a hero's journey that doesn't work out. And these questions that you start asking really let you define easier the cultures. And cultures I struggle with. I don't think I know enough cultures in the world to really be able to write a good culture yet. And so I'm not going to have a video on cultures probably for a while, as I'm trying to learn how to write these cultures and maybe learn about some more cultures first. And that's another part of world building, is taking from the real world and combining it and trying to represent it in a new, unique way. But that's a little off topic. But myths, which this would be, or legends, could also be this, but legends I tend to lean towards more heroic or inspiring. That's a legend. Myths are more all over the place. Stories even. But legends, I don't usually put a darker tone to it. And that's just me. I don't know. It's up to you how you define a legend. But each of these leads you to a new question which you could answer, or you don't answer. But if you're always asking why, you'll eventually get to a source. And that'll be something you can seed and lead your players to. And they'll feel cool for having found this secret or figured it out. You know, if my players hear about the Dead Mountains enough, and eventually they go there and they figure out why they're called that, that'd be cool. And, you know, this one's pretty on the nose with what it is, but others could be completely wrong. They could think something entirely different's happening, and you could turn it on their heads and explain it away a different way. Both of those methods, and there are many, many more methods for writing legends. I did another one about a sword. I started with one of the world anvil prompts, actually, was write about a ruin. And I was writing about the ruin. I was like, why does it have what is its use? And I decided that its use was used to house a sword. So then I started writing about that sword, made it a legendary sword, gave it some necklaces that the players would have to go first find out that there's a legendary sword, decide they want to go on this mission, get the necklaces, and then come and get the sword somewhere else. And they may never do that. But just because I've wrote it as it's in a ruin, I could put that ruin anywhere if I wanted to put it in front of them and let them see it. I could just throw it out there, they could find it, and go on and decide to do this quest. Or I'm going to put a book in there that they can't translate because it's in a really old language, and they're just going to have it. Eventually, they'll find something that can translate the book. Sorry about that. They'll find something that can translate the book, translate it, and maybe they decide to go on this quest because it's been a question they've had for months, years maybe, depending on how long the campaign goes. So I think what I'm trying to, in the end, myths and legends, stories like that are important for making your world feel like a real world. Having things for the players to find, discover, and explore that aren't just purely main quest. If it's all purely main quest, it'll feel eventually railroady. Now, if you're writing a book, even books have little side plots or side quests or things that you do. But they don't need as many as a campaign does, because players don't like being railroaded in my experience. And I highly advise you don't force them to do anything unless they're being ridiculous. If they're being ridiculous, you can put your foot down. But normally, I kind of let my players explore. Usually, they want to do the main storyline. I haven't really encountered players that specifically don't want to do the main storyline. But anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you like it, please remember to like and subscribe. There's going to be a link to a Discord I've put together down below. It's just got a place for writers, world builders, map makers, even DMs and players. Anybody really that wants to find other creative people to talk to or ask questions about. So, once again, thank you and have a great day.